Next on TCM, Once Upon a Time in the West, then Fitzcarraldo, and later 8.5. Claudia goes to 11 tonight.
Good evening, I'm Dave Karger. Welcome to Turner Classic Movies. Tonight we're paying tribute to the beautiful, talented, and prolific actress Claudia Cardinale, who passed away in September of last year at the age of 87. Born Claude Cardinale in 1938, she grew up in Tunisia, the daughter of Sicilian immigrants, and first attracted attention as a teenager when she won the Most Beautiful Italian Girl in Tunisia competition. The prize was a trip to the Venice Film Festival, and the media attention she drew at the festival soon led to a career in movies. She began appearing in Italian films in 1958 and quickly became one of the most popular leading ladies of the era, right up there with her contemporaries, Sophia Loren, who will be our star of the month in April, and Gina Lollobrigida. Cardinale also became a favorite of many of Italy's top directors and went on to star in several films that are still widely considered some of the best ever to come out of Italy, or anywhere for that matter, including Federico Fellini's 8.5, Luchino Visconti's Rocco and His Brothers, and the movie that we're beginning with tonight. From 1968, directed by Sergio Leone, it's Once Upon a Time in the West. Claudia Cardinale stars as a woman who moves out west from New Orleans to join her new husband. He's acquired a valuable piece of property, but before she can reach him, someone else gets there first, a ruthless killer who works for the railroad company. In a brilliant example of casting against type, he's played by Henry Fonda. The movie also stars Charles Bronson and Jason Robards, and like all of Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns, this one also features a memorable score by the great Ennio Morricone. Released in Italy in 1968 and in the U.S. 1 year later, here is Once Upon a Time in the West. Once Upon a Time in the West was the first Western that Sergio Leone directed after finishing the groundbreaking trilogy of spaghetti westerns he made with Clint Eastwood, which introduced Eastwood as the iconic Man with No Name and made him an international star. Leone originally wanted Eastwood to play the character of Harmonica in Once Upon a Time in the West, but Eastwood turned it down in order to continue his career in Hollywood, so that role went to Charles Bronson. Leone did get another actor he had been wanting to work with for a long time, Henry Fonda. For years, Fonda had been too expensive for Leone to afford, but the success of movies like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly put Leone in a position to offer him a role. It was the kind of part Fonda would never have gotten in Hollywood, and when the movie was released in the U.S. a year later, some of his more shocking moments were cut, including the scene where he kills McBain's children. Claudia Cardinale later recalled working with Fonda on this picture and said the first scene they filmed together was their bedroom scene. She said it was very embarrassing for us because the press were invited. Up next, Claudia Cardinale returns in another landmark film, this one from 1982, written and directed by Werner Herzog.
Next on TCM, Fitzcarraldo, then 8.5, and later, Don't Make Waves. It's Smooth Sailing with Claudia tonight.
Hi, I'm Dave Karger. Welcome back to TCM as we continue our tribute to Claudia Cardinale. In the early 1960s, Cardinale broke through as one of the most popular stars in Italian films, and she continued to work steadily for the next 6 decades. She gave her final screen performance in 2022 and passed away last September at 87. Up next is a movie that came 3 decades into Claudia Cardinale's career, and it gave her the chance to work with the audacious and visionary German filmmaker Werner Herzog. From 1982, it's Fitzcarraldo. The inspiration for the film came from a true story about a Peruvian rubber baron named Carlos Fitzcarrald, who in the 1890s managed to move a steamship through the Amazon on land in order to reach an area of the jungle that was thought to be inaccessible. For director Werner Herzog, the chance to replicate this outrageous feat was too exciting to pass up, and he rewrote the main character in the story as an Irish businessman named Brian Sweeney Fitzgerald. He lives in Peru, where the locals call him Fitzcarraldo, and he dreams of opening an opera house and bringing opera to the natives. But he needs money, and he plans to get it by harvesting rubber in a remote part of the Amazon basin. Claudia Cardinale plays the owner of a brothel who gives him enough money to buy a ship, and he proceeds to attempt the impossible, carting his ship through the jungle, including over a small mountain. Originally, the movie was supposed to reunite Claudia Cardinale with Jason Robards, who had been her co-star in Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West. The cast also originally included Mick Jagger playing Robards' sidekick, but the production turned out to be so treacherous and time-consuming that both men had to leave halfway through. The Mick Jagger character was removed from the story, and Jason Robards was replaced by Klaus Kinski. As you're watching, keep in mind that everything in the film was shot on location without any special effects. I'll talk more about the famously troubled production after the movie. From 1982, this is Fitzcarraldo. And produced Fitzcarraldo has always had a reputation for taking enormous risks as a filmmaker, and this movie is a perfect example. Herzog brought his cast and crew deep into the Amazon jungle to make the film, and he was determined to avoid using any special effects, even for the sequence where hundreds of indigenous locals move a 300-ton steamship across a mountain. Herzog's commitment to authenticity wasn't the only obstacle the production faced. Halfway through shooting, the original star of the film, Jason Robards, became seriously ill, and his doctors advised him not to return to work in the jungle. He was replaced by Klaus Kinski, who had starred in several of Herzog's earlier films but was notoriously difficult to work with. The production ultimately dragged on for years, and the ordeal was chronicled in a 1982 documentary directed by Les Blanc called Burden of Dreams. Still, looking back on it, Claudia Cardinale described making this movie as the best adventure of my life. Up next, Cardinale stars opposite Marcello Mastroianni in an Oscar-winning 1963 film directed by Federico Fellini.
Next on TCM, 8½, then Don't Make Waves, and later, A Fine Pair. We're not shy with Claudia tonight.
Hi there, I'm Dave Karger. Thanks for joining me tonight on TCM. Up next, our tribute to Claudia Cardinale continues with one of her most memorable performances in a film that's routinely ranked as one of the best and most influential movies of all time. From director Federico Fellini in 1963, it's 8½. The title is a reference to Fellini's own career. At this point, he had directed 6 features and 3 short films, which added together in his mind totaled 7½ films. This next feature brought that total to 8½. And the title isn't the only aspect of the film that reflects Fellini's life and career. By his own admission, 8½ was entirely autobiographical. Marcello Mastroianni stars as a stand-in for Fellini, a filmmaker named Guido, who's recently scored a huge hit, but can't figure out what to do for his follow-up. He struggles with writer's block, and in order to work through it, he delves deep into his memories and fantasies, most of which involve the various women in his life. One of those women is a mysterious beauty who embodies everything Guido idealizes, and she's played by Claudia Cardinale. Thinking back on this busy period in her career, Cardinale said that she made 8½ while also working on The Leopard with Luchino Visconti, and her directors on the 2 films were entirely different. She likened Visconti to doing theater very serious, whereas Fellini was no script, just improvisation all the time. The style of 8½ is surreal and often deliberately confusing, bouncing back and forth between Guido's reality and his fantasies and blurring the lines between real life and illusion. Some moviegoers at the time found it hard to follow, especially after Fellini's 2 more conventional recent hits, Nights of Cabiria and La Dolce Vita. But many recognized it as a masterpiece right away, and it went on to earn 5 Oscar nominations, including 2 for Fellini, for Best Director and Best Screenplay. It won in 2 other categories for Best Costume Design and Best Foreign Language Film. From 1963, also with Anouk Aimée, here is 8½. As you may have noticed watching 8½, the dialogue was a little out of sync or otherworldly. That's because it was standard practice in Italy at the time to dub the dialogue in post-production. Often the actors just mouthed nonsense, and Fellini wrote the words after filming wrapped. 8½ premiered in 1963, which turned out to be one of the most successful years of Claudia Cardinale's long and prolific career. The same year, she also starred opposite Alain Delon and Burt Lancaster in The Leopard, directed by Luchino Visconti, And she worked with an American director for the first time, Blake Edwards, on The Pink Panther. She played the princess who was the rightful owner of the Pink Panther diamond, and her co-star, David Niven, famously quipped that Claudia Cardinale was Italy's best invention since spaghetti. Up next, Claudia Cardinale stars opposite Tony Curtis in a romantic comedy from 1967.
Next on TCM, Don't Make Waves. Then A Fine Pair. And later, West Point. TCM stands at attention today.